From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome to U.S. Farm Report. This weekend, there's only one place where it's perfectly acceptable to eat a grilled cheese and drink a milkshake every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that's exactly where we are this week. We are on the road from the World Dairy Expo right here in Madison, Wisconsin, and here's what's in store over the next 60 minutes. Is America's dairy demand booming like never before?
Cheese is driving the bus. We're eating about 42 pounds of cheese per person per year and continue to eat more. Pizza has clearly contributed to that.
Dairy groups say the push for processing is in uncharted waters, but is it flowing down to dairy farmers?
So we're making money on the wet bull calves that are coming out. It's much harder to make it on the milk unless you're sizable and trying to, look at margins to a larger herd.
A big breakup in ag, the latest on Corteva. Plus, last year at this time, this 12-year-old girl was desperately looking for a heart.
So when we saw the smile on their face, then we knew we were getting some good news.
The good news she received in January and the drive it created in this little girl. Now for the news. It was a news cycle of uncertainty for producers this week. That was after a government shutdown. It comes after the president and Congress failed to come to an agreement that would have kept the government funded through Wednesday's deadline. Here's a look at what it means for farmers and ranchers. Payments under several programs, including CRP, ARC, PLC, and some disaster programs, well, those were suspended this week. Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins saying on X that animal and crop research was halted, food safety research stopped, and trade negotiations ended as well.
We won't get the weekly export sales. We won't get the inspections. We probably won't get the flash sales. We won't get the October WASDE. So this is going to get very challenging for the trade. We are really going to be flying blind over the next couple of weeks until this government shutdown ends. And that could have a little bit of negative reaction. As the old saying goes, you like to keep a bull market fed. If we're not getting bullish information, not getting sales, that could be price negative.
Reuters reports roughly 42,000 USDA employees will be furloughed during the shutdown. And while trade negotiations were at a standstill due to the government shutdown, well, it also doesn't appear that China will be buying any U.S. soybeans soon. Republican lawmakers getting a briefing from the U.S. ambassador to China, David Perdue, this week. Republican Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota saying after the briefing, quote, "We recognize that China has intentionally not bought farm goods. We don't expect them to change that," end quote. China has yet to book a single shipment of U.S. soybeans this marketing year. President Trump expects to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit later this month to discuss trade. But we could learn more about a possible government aid package for farmers on Tuesday. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent telling CNBC that's when there will be an announcement regarding what he called substantial support for U.S. farmers, especially soybean growers. Soybean producers have weathered high input prices, lower commodity prices, along with the fact China has yet to buy any new crop soybeans. In the past, China has been the biggest buyer of U.S. soybeans. President Trump also saying on his Truth Social site he would use some money from tariffs being collected to aid farmers. Another big announcement, Corteva making it official. It is separating its seed and pesticide businesses into two separate companies. One company will handle its crop protection business. It will be known as New Corteva. The other will be called Spinco, and it will handle the seed business, including Pioneer's brand. Corteva says the separation will allow each company to set specific capital allocation strategies, respond faster to market shifts, and pursue growth opportunities independently. Corteva added that its crop protection unit would be responsible to settle claims, including those linked to PFAS or forever chemicals. The deal is expected to be completed in the second half of next year. Well, the latest quarterly grain stocks report did little to fuel a rally in the grain markets earlier this week. Corn stocks coming in much higher than trade estimates at 1.5 billion bushels, soybeans at 316 million, that was below trade estimates, and wheat at 2.1 billion bushels, that was higher. The report was bearish for corn, but not a huge surprise considering how basis levels were indicating more old crop corn was in the system.
The basis of late summer was very, very weak. The spreads were suggesting there was plenty of grain out there. And if you just look at just the logic, the government lowered the feed number back in January, never touched it for the next 9 months. They did raise exports throughout the summer or throughout the marketing year as we kept shipping grain to Mexico to feed that livestock. So to find that we had some extra bushels laying around due to, I believe, lack of feed. And like I said, the cash market was giving those signals, and the government came clean today and gave us a little bit bearish number.
Well, efforts continue to arm cattle producers with more tools to fight against New World screwworm. The latest, the FDA approving a drug for prevention and treatment. The agency approving Dectomax CA1. It's an injectable solution for the prevention and treatment of NWS. The treatment comes from Zoetis. It's a conditional approval. It applies to beef cattle, female dairy cattle less than 20 months of age, pregnant beef cows, newborn calves, and bulls. Well, U.S. dairy was a big topic of discussion for one high-ranking USDA official during a recent visit to Taiwan. Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Ag Affairs Luke Lindberg visiting Taiwan. While there, the National Milk Producers Federation, the U.S. Dairy Export Council, and the Dairy Association of Taiwan all signed a memorandum of understanding. The goal, to defend dairy, support dairy farming, and deepen the cooperation between the two countries when it comes to trade. It was signed during a USDA-led trade mission. That's it for the news. Well, there is a ripple of excitement across the dairy industry here. Milk prices may be lower than they were a year ago, but there's an underlying truth that could drive the dairy industry in the years ahead, and it's all about demand. That's our Farm Journal report coming up next.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Pioneer. Plant with confidence. Plant the #1 corn and soybean seed in the U.S. Pioneer.